Well, hello, Ms. Carolyn Tyler Robinson.
Hello.
My name is Gloria Mantooth, and I'm with the Unsung Heroes Living History Project, created to honor local African American veterans and their families who served in the United States military and later made Lompoc and Santa Maria area their home, raising families and strengthening our community. We believe military service is not carried by the veteran alone, but also the spouse and the family. So today we would like to thank you for that shared sacrifice by inviting you to tell your part of the story. Let's start with what early life was like before the military. What do you remember hearing about who your parent was before they joined the service?
All I know is, I remember is that he was young. He was 18 years old when he went in. He had graduated from high school and decided, living in Texas, and decided that he wanted to do something um, to get out, of his town. He lived in a small town in Texas, and he decided to go into the Air Force.
Hmm. Do you know how the family reacted when he decided to join the military? Was the family proud? Were they worried? Were they surprised? Supportive?
He never really talked about it. Um, just that he had made a decision that he was going to go in, and he went in, and his mom was around, and it was fine with her.
Mhm. And why do you think he decided to join?
To be able to make a better life for himself. He grew up in Texas, a small town, and um, figured that he'd get a career of some sort by learning a skill in the military.
Did he ever share any stories about boot camp or training?
He never shared any stories about boot camp. Just that he was the kind of person that if he was going to do something, he was going to do it 100%. He wasn't um, going to let anyone stop him or block him from, doing what it is he wanted to do. He was going to give it his all in order to do a good job.
Mhm. Do you think he felt prepared when he first joined?
He never talked about that at all.
What kind of work did he do in the military as far as you know?
When he started out, he did discuss that um, when he first went in, and he went in 1951, the military was still segregated. So during that time, the jobs that the African American airmen could do it was limited. Um, so he started out as like a vehicle operator, a driver, and that wasn't his preference, but that was one of the jobs that they could do as African American soldiers.
Did he talk about places where he was stationed or traveled to?
He his first assignment was actually after boot camp. His first assignment was in at Chennault Air Force Base, Louisiana, which is where he met my mother. And then they ended up getting married. I mean, like very shortly after meeting. And then right after they were married, maybe 3 4 years, he got stationed to Ashia, Japan. And so he went over first, and then my mother and my three older siblings went over by ship to meet him. in Japan.
And based on what he shared, what do you think a typical day was like for him in uniform?
He didn't really talk about his service, his job a lot when he came home, or he talked about it later when we were adults. Um, but he was really proud of what he had accomplished, as staying in and becoming a career military person. He was very adamant about doing the 20 years and at least getting the retirement and the benefits that came with it. Being able to go to school, and which he was able to do after he retired. He went back to school and he got an associate's degree. He got his bachelor's degree in criminal justice later in life.
Did he talk about friends or people that he served with who mattered a lot to him?
He did have one when he was in Japan. He was a driver for a lieutenant colonel in the military, and that was the only job that he was able to do because it was in the 50s. And the colonel said to him that he knew that he had an ability to do more than just drive a vehicle, and that he um, was looking forward to the day when, the African Americans could have the opportunity, to show what they could do. Because my dad was very mechanical. He loved cars and, working on them. And eventually he did become a mechanic, and he worked on the flight line, working on planes and, all that sort of stuff.
So even while serving, family is always important. How did your dad stay connected with family while he was away?
Writing letters, he was adamant. I mean, when we moved from Louisiana to Vandenberg, um, his thing was that he was always going to make sure that we got to know our family members. So every summer in our station wagon, he packed us all up, and my mom and all of us, and he drove to Texas, and we'd visit his family. And then he would go on to Louisiana, and we'd spend time with our family in Louisiana. So that was something that he was really adamant about, was calling and visiting and making sure that we, knew our families.
Are there items in your family that you still have that remind you of his service?
I actually have a pair of his boots that he wore, because his shoe size was small because he was a smaller stature, and I actually can wear them, and I still have them. His military, they called them programs back then.
Did your parent ever talk about difficult or unfair experiences that he faced while serving?
Just, I mean, those couple of years when it was segregated, and then when they became integrated, um, it was often difficult. Um, they shared one time that he shared they were driving, uh, from Lake Charles to Mississippi, and uh, he ended up on the freeway or on the road going to through Mississippi, and it was difficult. Even he had a uniform on, and when the cops stopped them, it didn't matter that they were wearing that uniform. They were still belligerent and, used all the racial epithets. It just, So he'd talk about that kind of stuff, off and on, that it was hard back then in the 50s.
Did he ever describe the military as a place of teamwork or belonging?
Yes, he had, I mean, a lot of his buddies after service, he served with many of them at Vandenberg. They remained friends, and they never lost touch. They stayed in their little group. All of his friends were pretty much military retired.
Were there leaders or role models that he talked about and admired during his service?
The one lieutenant colonel that he talked about from Japan that made him feel capable, that he was appreciated for the job he did as his driver, and that he felt like he told him that he understood and knew that he was could accomplish more than what he was being allowed to.
So, talking about coming home, what do you remember about his transition back into civilian life?
He seemed to do that pretty easily. The Vandenberg did have a good system for transitioning them back, and he took advantage of that was the reason why he went to college, was he used his GI Bill. They he used the GI Bill to go back to school. They had recommended that. There was some office on the base, I remember him talking about, that would help them transition. And he did attend those workshops, and decided that he was going to go to school, and get his associate's degree. And then from there, he decided he was going to get his bachelor's, but he ended up working at the Unemployment Development Department. He worked there for shortly after having retired. That was his first. And then he did substitute teaching. Once he had gotten his associate degree, he was able to do some substitute teaching in the Lompoc School District. So he transitioned well.
Do you think the military service changed him as a person?
He definitely said it made him grow up, helped him to grow up, and they've become more disciplined and more focused. Um, and then having a family. I mean, he was 18 when he and my mom got married, and having children soon after, uh, it grew him up, but he was able to provide for his family too.
What do you think he was most proud of from his service in the military?
Being able to stay in and be retired, to be able to say, I retired from the U.S. Air Force. He was proud of that with his grandsons and the grandchildren. They would say, our papa, he was in the Air Force. You could tell that it was a sense of pride for him and then several of them went into the military. Um, a couple of my nephews went into the Army. They actually went in the Army, but they had saw their grandfather, had done that service.
Did he pass down any lessons or advice based on his time in the military?
Just being, if you were going to commit to any kind of service, to do it, be committed to it, and that's one of the reasons why when I um, worked in civil service for the county, my goal was to get in there and commit to it and be able to retire. And I was able to do that because he showed me as he was an example of that.
When future generations of your family hear about his service, what do you hope they understand or remember the most?
That his service was, that he did it for his family, mainly. He was a family man, and he wanted to be able to provide for his kids and have benefits for his family and be able to, have a home and, all those things that you want for your family, and for them to see that, as their grandfather, um, he took care of his family and he did a good job, and he stayed in there and he was committed to the military.
Well, Miss Carolyn Robinson, thank you so much for sharing your memories. I'm trying to remember if we actually got his name on the recording. So would you go ahead, please, and make sure that we have his full name and when he retired and his rank and what branch of the service he was in?
Walter Tyler Sr., U.S. Air Force, retired 20 years. He retired in 1971.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Your perspective helps keep your parents' story alive, not just as a veteran, but as a whole person and how and what he meant to your family.
Thank you.